What is the significance of theories and theoretical paradigms? We have theories because we want to explain things, either because of intellectual curiosity or because we want to make practical applications of them. And we have theoretical strategies because they provide efficient guidelines to develop theories. So I want to go over 5 key points of what makes a good theory, and you should note these, write these down and what they mean because it's something that I'll ask you about later. First, logical coherence. So is the theory internally consistent? Do the parts of the theory fit together? Does one part or premise contradict another part or premise? That shouldn't be happening. It should be consistent. So there should be logical coherence. Empirical success. Is there evidence that supports the theory? Good theories are the best or most supported and tested. So it's not which one is perfect, but which theory is most supported by the available evidence. So a good theory should have some empirical success, be supported by the available evidence. Third, parsimony or simplicity. It explains a lot with a little. It uses a few concepts and assumptions. And so it should be parsimonious. And then explanatory power. Explanatory power relative to other theories. Compared to other theories, how effective is this theory at explaining the subject? And then finally, productivity. Does it continue to be the source of new ideas? It's productive if it continues to produce new and interesting ideas. So there are some theories from the 1800s and early 1900s, like Durkheim's, which we'll go into this semester in detail, like Du Bois, that are still used today as theoretical frameworks for scholarly papers and to explain contemporary issues. Evaluating theory. So theory is less open to interpretation than maybe literature is. If you have to read into a theory for it to work, the theory is flawed. Now, of course, we sometimes have to read between the lines a little bit, but there's a difference between that and reading so much into a theory that we're making up explanations for it to work. And this doesn't mean that theory is easy to read. Sociological theories are explaining complex issues that have a long history. But we should be able to pull out the key ideas with a careful reading of it. That should be clear. And point 2, what are the authors trying to explain? Keep this in mind when you're evaluating theory. What are their goals? Right? Authors usually set out when they write a piece what their main goals are in writing this piece. They should accomplish those goals by the end of the piece, right? If they say they're going to do something, they should have addressed that issue or answered that question or evaluated it in some way by the end of the piece. So evaluate them on that, right? What are the goals that they set out to accomplish, and did they achieve those goals? Not on whether or not they achieved the goals we wanted them to achieve, but what they said that they were setting out to explain and how successful they were at the end. So to read theory, you really have to concentrate. You have to step back from it. You have to take some time to digest it. Ask yourself what the main ideas are, and can you illustrate those ideas with a few examples? And so is the theory tight? Does each premise support and complement the other? Do the premises contradict each other? Are the premises the most credible ones out there, or are there other competing or alternative explanations with more explanatory power? And are the premises logical? Induction and deduction. We should understand how theory and research relates. And there's 2 different strategies for relating theory and research. Induction, which means going from the specific to the general. Or more precisely, induction means starting with facts or research, evidence, and generalizing a theory from that. Deduction means proceeding from the general to specific. So starting with a theoretical paradigm, deriving a more specific theory from it, and then collecting research or evidence to test that theory. Both of these approaches can be used and combined. Can theories be proven true? Some say yes, like mathematical theories, but math is a very specific type of closed systems theory. Some argue that not all theories can be proven true. They can only be falsified. You don't know that the theory you have is the only one out there or even the best. You can only say that this is the best we know of so far. There could be yet undiscovered, simpler and more beautiful theories out there than the one we have. Many people used to think that it was possible to prove theories true, but several decades ago, around the 1940s, 1950s, there was a philosopher by the name of Karl Popper who argued that logically, this couldn't be. He argued that we could only proceed in reverse, i.e. not by trying to verify a theory, but by trying to falsify one. Why is it not possible to prove theories, according to Popper? Well, for example, we could theorize that all swans are white. To support this hypothesis, we could gather more and more empirical observations of white swans to show that this is absolutely correct. All swans are white. We keep finding these swans and they're all white. However, it only takes one black swan to disprove that theory. And I believe the first black swan was discovered in Australia. So he's arguing you cannot know that you have all the evidence to prove a theory true. Proven true means that you have established the theory without any doubt. Now, a good theory must be one that can be tested and falsified. Some argue we never say that we prove anything in social and even the biological sciences. Rather, we say that we support this or that theory. You can, however, have theories that offer the best possible explanations, theories that are closest to the truth. Theoretical orientations. This you read about in your textbook, and here's the image from Edles and Appelrouth. So the authors present this continuum from individual to collective. Or you can think about it in terms of micro and macro, which is what many of you should have gone over in your Intro to Sociology courses if you've taken it. With the individualistic orientation, the focus is on how individuals or small groups of individuals create society and how they behave in society. So symbolic interactionists, which is a paradigm we will cover, they fit here. With collective orientation, society is pictured as an overarching system that works down on individuals and groups. That's the macro orientation. Functionalism and conflict theory fit here. So if we were watching a basketball game, or if a basketball game was society, where would a micro-individualistic theorist sit to watch the game, and where would a macro-collectivist theorist sit? A micro-theorist would probably sit up front so that they could see the interactions of the players with each other, with their coach, with the audience, and they'd be interested in that small scale interaction with each other, what's happening, what's being said, what language develops, what symbols develop, what are used in those interactions. Macro theorists might sit further away to see the game as a whole, as an entire institution. They would identify the different components of that institution and positions, less than focusing on specific individuals, but the positions and what the positions mean, why they're important. They would look from above to see how those arrangements explain social behavior. The other dimensions to begin thinking about are the rational and irrational. Action is primarily non-rational when it's guided by values, morals, norms, and traditions. Rational actions are motivated primarily by the attempt to maximize rewards while minimizing costs. Now keep in mind, theorists may lean more toward one side of the continuum than the other, but they're never purely one or the other. You should use these orientations not to place one theorist strictly into one camp over another, but to understand where the theorist is coming from. So Edles and Appelrouth are giving you different tools to begin comparing and contrasting theorists. Okay, but definitely they've portrayed it as a continuum, and that's how you should think of it. And so they also give you this example of practicing theory. And they ask, why do people stop at red traffic lights? You can look at this question in terms of its rational and irrational motivations and its individual and collective orientations. So if you look at the box where it's individual, non-rational, people may be guided by non-rational values. They stop at that red light because they believe it's the right thing to do, or they stop without thinking out of habit. Both of these positions are guided by an individual orientation, something coming internally from within the individual. And it's non-rational in that it is focused on morals and values. If you look at the individual rational box, on the individual level, you may stop at the red light because it's the rational thing to do. You don't want to get a ticket and have to pay for that ticket. You don't want to get into a car accident. Your authors point out then, if you're only guided by the rational, then you'll not stop at the light when there's no danger or police cars in sight. So individual rational. So it's not that you care so much about the collective morals here. You can get a ticket and not care that what you've done may be morally wrong. You're not so much concerned about those collective societal values. You mainly care about the individual cost to you. Collective non-rational. So you may stop at a red light because you're guided by the morals that you have learned through socialization. As your author states, society teaches us it's wrong to disobey laws. The authors call this hegemonic moral order. Or people may be stopping at the red light because they're reacting to symbols they've learned as part of culture. So here you have external pressures, external values and ideas acting upon the individual. So in both of these situations, you're guided by the collective orientation. So the collective orientation has to do with values outside of yourself. It's something larger than you. And then finally, there's the collective rational. You may stop because you feel pressured by what your authors call hegemonic legal structure. So here it's not just about the individual cost of the ticket. You feel that you'll be punished by the institution of the law, right? You don't want to break the law. It's not just the financial loss that you'll experience, which is individual. It's a fear of punishment, a fear of a legal authority. And so it has to do, again, with the external pressure, not so much the internal. And remember, again, these orientations are not to be taken as absolutes. They absolutely bleed into each other. Your author's goal is to give you those organizing principles just to get you thinking at the beginning of the semester about theory and how to look at theory. So also, if you're in 4100, make sure you take a look at the overview on paradigms, because that's something that I might ask you about next time to reflect on, the overview of the theoretical paradigms, what paradigms there are and what theories there are.